I love horror games. I've always been a fan of horror games. I don't think I'm ready for this! Get through the door! Some have jarring, cheap jump scares, perfect bait for all the YouTubers. Others have a creepy atmosphere that actually sticks with you.
Did you see that?
But those kiddie ones, you know, those horror games made for kids, featuring the fluffy mascots with the plastic smiles, nursery rhyme-esque jingles, friendly colors and Fisher-Price aesthetics, they're just everywhere, and they're kinda lame. Maybe lame is a bit too harsh, but you know what I mean. So, what makes these games lame? Allow me. Yeah, that's a lot. A lot of games. Quantity does not equal quality, and quality does not equal originality, and it feels like every week there's another one of these games all chasing the same formula. It's horror sure, but watered down, kidified and made safe. Look, listen, there's nothing wrong with inspiration and being inspired, but when everyone's trying to be the next FNAF, of course, none of them end up standing out. I can't even tell these games apart anymore. Who's gonna tell them that having overcomplicated lore doesn't make the story good? Who's gonna tell them that shallow gameplay kills the fear? Who's gonna tell them that chasing trends isn't the same as making something timeless? Alright, so what does it mean to be timeless? Well, it's not about doing what everyone else is doing, I'll tell you that much. A general rule of thumb is this: tension comes from restraint, horror comes from pacing. I'm gonna throw up. Okay, I'm actually gonna throw up. These ingredients help to create something people can't forget, which ironically is something the original Five Nights at Freddy's understood. By taking something so unremarkable, a simple night security job, managing to flip it into something that changed how a generation saw horror games. It wasn't flashy or loud, I mean it had plenty of jump scares, yes, but the ambience, those weird oddities you could barely make out over the security cameras, the slow building tension as you progressed through every night, that's what made it stick. It's a shame I can't say the same for what followed. Not just within the FNAF catalog either, but all the kiddie shit it gave birth to. Horror that colors inside the lines, plastic fear. Again, they pile on the lore to hide the lack of any real substance. They throw in creepy marketable mascots to appeal to the infants and the YouTubers that shepherd them. They tack on gimmicks to fill the time while the game itself barely does anything. Timeless horror takes risks, is thoughtful, and wants to tell a story worth telling. Kidified horror is safe, trades depth for spectacle, and feels more formulaic if anything. Ultimately, you play these games and forget them right after. It's not to say that they don't have their merits. A lot of these games are good, great even, and their accessibility introduces more people to horror, guiding them toward more unique gaming experiences. I'm aware that not everyone can stomach being spooked, so having a lighter, more approachable option will always be welcome. What isn't welcome, however, is how easily these games sacrifice the richness of the genre and reduce fear to a lazy set of predictable mechanics. Whether that be ducking into closets and hiding spots, hollow scares and scripted shocks, an over-reliance on aesthetics and set dressing no matter how cool they may be, fleeing a single enemy in a sterile chase sequence, etc, etc, etc. Yes, these elements exist in almost every horror game, yet the difference is that they're layered, with mechanics that actually engage the player for one, and currents that carry you into the terror, letting players inhabit the fear instead of just reacting to it. By oversimplifying the experience, you're doing a disservice to the genre by telling players that all these games have to offer is virality, moments designed to be watched, not felt, and experiences that fade as quickly as they arrive. But horror is subjective.
How an audience interprets a piece of media is subjective, sure, but there is a certain set of rules that media must follow in order to meet the set definition of horror. I mean, there are people who think Teletubbies are scary, and while there are fan-made horror games inspired by the likeness of the show, that doesn't suddenly mean that television networks are pulling it off the air because it's causing rampant shit. I wonder if these kinds of shows are what caused modern generations to be so enamored with the idea of mascot horror games. A subgenre of horror that aims to target childhood nostalgia isn't necessarily a bad concept, but it certainly is overused at this point. From like the very first FNAF to Garten of Banban 9, or whatever the newest... Did you know the first game in that series was released in 2023? That's like 9 games in just under 2 years. We all know they suck, even the Steam reviews think so, yet the online video influencer swallows it up. So instead of masterclass storytelling with definitive answers, we have to settle for the bite of 87 that may or may not have happened, and the kids that died may or may not be ghosts, and this may or may not be a hallucination on the part of the purple guy who may or may not have died, and now there's a movie and a book and you've got to watch and read both to possibly or you can just watch game theory and good old MatPat will do all the thinking for you. The end result, a content machine that is what it eats. While I might be singling mascot horror out, the same can be applied to several different subgenres. And don't get me started on what online influencing has done to the modern AAA space. It's a catastrophe. I do believe the indie space has grown a lot. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that people thought running around and picking 8 pages up off the ground was an inspired gameplay loop. But there is a vast difference between simplistic gameplay loops due to the technical limitations of game developers from 15 years ago and the regurgitated Unreal Engine slop of today. The kidification of horror and its semantic drift are consequences of an audience that would love nothing more than to watch what makes them feel comfortable. So, why is this the case? And how does it harm this genre that I love? Well, comfort is the antithesis of horror. To provide an audience with the comfort of not having to think or actually be afraid, several unfortunate things must happen. And luckily for you, viewer, I understand the pipeline from both sides enough to break it down. First, a creator tunes into recent trends because their existence as creators hinges on financial success, and they allow it to infect any creative or original idea they may have had. This is done to market the game to slop connoisseurs. Secondly, they deviate from complex or sophisticated storytelling in favor of quote-unquote lore by alluding to hidden meanings or plot that hides under the surface. This is done to maximize the potential that Game Theory or some other such channel will make a video about the game. And finally, they remove subtlety in favor of explicit scares and startling sounds because they are fun and create clippable moments for your favorite Markipliers. The hope is that they bring exposure to the game through virality so that every schmuck can clip the exact same reaction. This is the trifecta that contributes to the decaying quality of entertainment media in general. But you know what? I do want to get started on AAA horror games because what the hell even is there to talk about? The most successful AAA horror games are remakes of better games, often made worse in an attempt to appeal to modern audiences. The second most successful AAA horror games are sequels to long-neglected series that are banking on brand recognition. All the actually good stuff is hidden in the indie market that is becoming just as corrupt and saturated by developers who may have cared at one point but would rather cash in on what works because you'll starve if you don't. Don't believe me? I mean, just look around. Horror isn't about the implicit creeping dread anymore. Now desperate to monetize every corner, games that are less concerned with tension or fear and more with gimmicks and franchise spin-offs. Anything that can be merchandised or slapped onto a TikTok trend or a theme park. Monsters are no longer frightening. They're merch opportunities. The spine-chilling artistry that once defined the genre reduced to haunted houses for babies where the actors can't touch you. No fan of horror would argue the industry is thriving creatively. And if you can't see how fear has been commodified, stripped of subtlety, and reduced to algorithm-friendly candy, then I've got a bridge to sell you. I don't need a horror game professor from the future with the powers of a psychic to tell me things are headed in the wrong direction. It's clear as day. We've turned the incredibly interesting discomfort of being afraid into bite-sized experiences that can be remade on Roblox. And horror, something meant to deeply disturb, to encourage a person to think, to comprehend, to unravel their own mortality, has become something we desperately dumb down and market to children in order to reach the front page on Itchio.
What happens when fear stops being for adults? When something made to challenge the psyche becomes something to distract it? Horror isn't just profitable now, it's palatable. And when horror becomes just another monetizable formula, nobody's actually creating, nobody's aiming to scare anyone, they're casting the widest net to catch the most amount of cash. You know there's a problem when platforms like Roblox literally push fear to children under the guise of fun horror obbies and scary games for kids. Now let's get one thing straight. Parents should raise their kids. Crazy concept, I know. But even so, there's something off about this. Something predatory. You can't pretend there isn't. Because why is horror being packaged like a toy? Aren't all the colors, the kiddish fonts, and the 5-minute frights kinda concerning? We all know who it's aimed at. Video games that dress up fear as fun, all the while they're still built on violence. The quality of the horror might not be stellar, but all the themes of murder, gore, and trauma are all usually still there. But even worse, they're teaching kids that horror isn't something to process, to think about, but that it's something to consume. Damage is being done, no doubt. However, it's easy to forget what you're actually seeing when it's filtered through your favorite content creator. Like, be for real. Who do you think is giving content like this millions of views? The next generation is cooked. It's genuinely disturbing, and yes, obviously, it's not being made for kids, but it's without a doubt being marketed at them. If your target demographic, whether you want to admit it or not, is children, naturally the bar will be lowered since you don't have to try as hard to create something meaningful. Is bro okay? A loud noise here, a little gore there, and a friendly serial killer popping up on screen is enough to make any fetus cry. I'm in no way saying that horror games need to think about the children. Who cares? They're horror games. Again, their parents should be doing all of the thinking. Regardless, it's something to think about and explains a lot about why horror feels both oversaturated and empty. Never mind mascot horror. Never mind the fetal undertones. Never mind the factory-made fear. Never mind whatever the fuck this. What the fuck is this? Never mind the fact that every new hit horror game spawns in a dozen clones that do nothing but copy. The kidification of horror has everything to do with how the genre as a whole is being neutered. How we fostered a development culture that believes that horror shouldn't disturb, but entertain. That these games should and must have Happy Meal appeal. Down to how they're structured. The short playtimes, the painfully simple puzzles, the safe repetition, built to keep players cycling through the same motions. Excuse me, there's food in my mouth, sorry. One last time. The goal isn't to scare anyone. It's to make sure you come back for the next installment, that you keep lining the industry's pockets. So horror gets smoothed out, censored, and simplified, and becomes a genre so afraid of losing attention that it's forgotten how to make us feel afraid. A genre worth fearing. Weird, isn't it? That I miss being genuinely scared. Miss when horror was something you felt alone and not with a bunch of people. Miss when these games didn't feel like content, like they weren't guiding you from one scream to the next. Miss being unsettled and not just startled. It's sad, but it's inevitable. What's popular is popular for a reason, and who doesn't want to be popular too? These games must be sanitized and accessible for any and everyone. Because if it's too scary, well, no one will play it. If it's not trendy enough, well, no one will play it. If it's a slow burner, too subtle and too weird, well, nobody will play it. Maybe that's the beauty of it all though, to die within your own genre, getting buried under trend and commerce, only to claw your way out uglier and better than before. Cause great horror isn't gone, it's just hiding in the games no one talks about. The ones without merch, without a clickbait thumbnail, they're nowhere near as popular, which I do find disappointing. That good horror games generally fly under the radar, while the next kiddie horror staple blows up overnight, garnering thousands of views and players. While the next AAA remake or remaster is applauded for breaking new ground. And I mean sure, but why doesn't that level of praise ever reach games like Crow Country, Blank Frame, Tormented Souls, Signalis, World of Horror, Chronos, Traffic, Post Trauma, The Devil, Among Ashes, Labyrinth of the Demon King, Hollow Body, The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, just to name a few horror games that have been recognized for their greatness, for being games that take risks, games that make you think, that let you feel something beyond a 5-second jump scare. Yet most of them remain underappreciated or struggle to reach an audience. I'm glad games like last year's Mouthwashing and this year's No I'm Not a Human managed to break through the mold, since content creators actually decided to farm 2 competent horror games for once, instead of the sea of nonsense they usually pick up. But when a critical masterpiece like Alan Wake 2 barely manages to turn a profit, it makes you wonder if the truth is that most traditional uncompromising horror games are destined to be overlooked, left to rot on Steam or itchio, while their creators wonder why nobody sees the value in real horror anymore. And in the most depressing way, it makes sense. Unless your game is kidified slop, algorithmically safe faultless dribble, you won't be seen, you won't get clicks, you won't survive. Yeah, you have the odd outlier, but this isn't just bad luck, it's a pattern, a symptom of the kidification shift. For the last time, the industry isn't nurturing horror, it's commodifying it. And the consumers, either kids chasing the next jump scare, or people who never learned how to appreciate fear. But fuck all that. In my restless dreams, I see those games. Those of us who care all see them, because we love horror games. And we want those developers, no matter how underappreciated or unseen you may think you are, to keep creating experiences we'll never forget. So please know, eventually the right eyes will find you. And when they do, you'll be the reason horror still matters. A reminder of what horror is supposed to feel like. I'm out.